This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Self-care is an aspect of self-love. It's impossible to give oneself the care one needs if one doesn't have some aspect of one's own value. Self-care can be just as simple as saying no instead of always saying yes, speaking one's truth instead of hiding how they feel, or simply deciding to give oneself a hot bubble bath instead of going out to the party you really don't want to go to. However, self-care can only be applied consistently and meaningfully if we are practicing the endeavor of self-love. If we don't have self-love driving the self-care, then the act of self-care becomes a temporary band-aid. Humans do struggle to love themselves. It is a universal affliction. All souls living this human life struggle with remembering who they really are and where they come from. And because of this, they spend their lifetimes looking outside of themselves to fill their own well. And more times than not, they feel the deficit of love within themselves because of this. In truth, we all come from one consciousness of unconditional love. That is what the divine is. Understanding this concept and giving ourselves this unconditional love is our greatest challenge, and yet is the most important precursor to offering unconditional love to another and receiving it back. We get caught up in the cycle of giving and receiving love with conditions, a love that is burdened and weighed down by needs and obligations, and a love that leaves us feeling unaccepted and less than. As mentioned before, both men and women spend an inordinate amount of time reaching outside of themselves to fill their own hearts up. We go in search of approval and validation from others in our family, our workplace, and in our personal relationships. Sometimes we use our success or perceived lack of it to measure our own worth. Filling one's own well with a sense of self-worth instead of needing others to fill it for you is the essence of self-love. Understanding that only you are responsible for what you need, that only you are able to truly give yourself what you feel is lacking within you, no amount of money, work, success, material things, Instagram likes, or relationships will give us the sense of love we all seek, and the self-care we crave will always be affected and compromised by our endless search outside of ourselves. In realizing that you are born of and from the divine, that which is unconditional love, we wake up to the fact that we, in truth, have nothing lacking in ourselves. We are in our very essence love. Our lack of love we feel for ourselves has been taught, directly or indirectly, as we have grown up from a young age. When we shift our subconscious mind back towards remembering who we are through a spiritual practice and discipline, we are then able to fill our own well with the love we have looked outside of ourselves for so long, says Joe Jason. Valeria Teles interviews Joe Jason. She was born in the United Kingdom and is a self-taught painter. She began her career as a muralist and decorative painter in London, Sydney, and New York. In 2008, she started working with the divine feminine energies. Since then, she has worked as a professional intuitive painter, channel, and teacher. Upon completion of her much-loved Goddess Chakra series, Jo went on to complete the internationally acclaimed Sacred Feminine series of paintings depicting 13 divine feminine channeled archetypes. The images and wisdom that Jo receives and shares has helped women all over the world find empowerment, healing, and inspiration. She is the author of the award-winning book, Self-Love Through the Sacred Feminine, the companion to her Sacred Feminine guidance cards and guidebook. Jo has spent 6 years teaching workshops and online courses for healing and self-development in the United States and offers paintings, prints, meditation kits, and CDs for physical and emotional wellness and empowerment. Here is the interview with Jo Jason.
In your own words, who is Jo Jason?
Jo Jason is a painter, an artist, an intuitive, and a teacher.
Wonderful. I have a few warm-up questions before we talk about your book, Self-Love Through the Sacred Feminine. So my first warm-up question is, what is life to you, Jo?
What is life? It's a journey of lots of experiences and lots of emotions and lots of growth.
What would you say is the opposite of life?
The opposite of life would be disconnection.
Yeah, that resonates. True. What is the meaning of freedom to you?
The meaning of freedom, that's quite a question. I think the ultimate freedom is total acceptance, acceptance of yourself and acceptance of everything around you and everybody around you. That's freedom, I guess. Yeah, when you have, complete acceptance and allowance of everything that is.
Yes, 1,000 times yes. At this time, what do you think is the world's greatest need? And what is your vision for a new reality?
The greatest need of this world is compassion and balance. The vision for a new reality. Harmony, harmony and balance. I think that's what's needed and what I would intend for this world going forward.
Right. What is love to you?
Love is an alignment with the truth and the vibration of who you really are, which is an energetic being, a spiritual being in a physical body, but born of the vibration of love.
Do you connect the idea of love to the idea of God?
Yes, a consciousness of love is how I would describe what others may call God.
Right. What is your understanding and idea of peace?
I think peace is very similar to freedom. The question that you asked me about freedom, I think peace is acceptance. I don't think you can have peace without acceptance.
Right. Do you see a difference between spirituality and religion?
Oh, yes.
How are they different?
Well, religion is a set of rules and doctrines that, used right, I guess, can take you on a path back to the truth of who you really are. And spirituality is the same, I guess, but it doesn't have rules. It doesn't have doctrine. It's a journey of self-discovery.
The journey, yeah, I guess that's the way you described life itself.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
I have 2 more questions left, the warm-up questions. What do you think is the purpose of life itself?
The purpose of life is, I think, what I would believe to be growth through joy. I think we're not here for any other reason than to grow and to expand. And the best way to do that is through joy.
Right. What do you think is the main purpose and the mission of your life?
To help people do that, to help people do that through an understanding of themselves and their own journey.
Yeah, maybe I have to rephrase this question about the gifts. Maybe I should ask, what do you think, or what are your gifts to the world, or what talents do you have that will help others to get there? Because I know you have many. I love your art, it's incredibly beautiful.
Thank you. Well, I hope that the images that I create inspire and empower people. So I would say that that was one of my main gifts. I think that they do for the most part. I think that drives everything else, really.
So let's talk about just that, your work. Talk to me about the inspiration and intention of writing the book Self Love Through the Sacred Feminine.
So I had already started a series of paintings about the chakras. It's called the Goddess Chakra series, and then I had, I guess it was a calling. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but a very strong urge to paint Guinevere, who, I had known about as a child and read, all the fairy tales and the stories and the whatever. And I started with her. It really just unraveled with her, really. It just unfolded a series of 13 archetypes that came through me to be painted and have their message expressed. And so that took me 7 years. And when I finally finished that, I realized that I had created, or I'd been given also, but I had created a path to self-love, for healing. And it had been my path. I had been through some difficult times, and I had kind of sort of, as many people do when they go through difficult times, that they kind of have to face themselves and rebuild a new path for themselves. And that's what happened with me. So when I finally finished the paintings, I gathered up all my information that I had sort of received from all of the images that I had painted and realized that it really was a book, and it needed to be shared with others so that others could be helped by what I had been given and received. So that's how it came to be. But it certainly wasn't an intention at the beginning when I started painting them at all. So I had no idea I would write a book, or they would all be part of a book, you know.
So that's so interesting. I actually have a question. I have one question here about channeling. But before that, it has been said, and it seems to me from my own experience, that the unknown forces, I would say, communicate a lot through numbers. Is that something that's real or?
Repetitive, consecutive numbers. Yeah, no, it is something that's real. And their numbers, like colors and music and sound, all have a vibration and a meaning and a message. So for sure, numbers are certainly a way of those in the non-physical to communicate with us in the physical.
Right, right. So, yeah, talk to me about channeling. What is channeling, and how did you develop this? How did you find out?
Do you know, I don't I don't really know what it is, to be honest, and I don't know. I think the word gets used a lot, and I think everybody, to an extent, channels something because we're all connected to our higher selves, and we're all connected to the bigger part of us, our souls, and our souls are, driving the car, as it were, or captain of the ship. And so we're constantly, unknowingly or knowingly, receiving information from that higher part of ourselves, plus, quite a lot of helpful energies around us that are guiding us and protecting us and helping us. So all of us are doing that, but some of us are a little more in tune with it and can hear it more. And I think that's really what channeling is. It's having a clear sort of line, telephone line to that, non-physical part.
Right. When you speak of the soul and that the soul is guiding us somewhere, could be spiritual evolution. I hear that a lot. That we are learning as spirit, as the soul. Then so we stop coming back here to learn lessons. Does it make sense to you?
Well, I don't think we stop coming back here to when our lessons are learned. We get there. This isn't our only place of schooling. There are other dimensions and other places and other ways for a soul to expand and learn. This is just one of them, so I think the soul is constantly growing. And remember, the soul is part of a collective soul and a collective consciousness, which is constantly growing. So that never stops. But I think, once we have reached a certain level of evolution, our souls, then there's no need to keep coming back to like the earth school, as it were.
Oh, I see. And then do you believe that there's different realities that we exist, but not really with the body, a physical body? Is that a belief, or this is something that you have had some experience, even personal experience with?
Well, I think for us to believe that this is the only reality is very limited. And I mean, people do talk about past lives, and I think it is more accurate to say other lives, where we exist in other realities at the same time. We have our souls have different aspects to themselves. It isn't just, my soul isn't just a big soul and just Joe Jason. There's a lot of aspects to my soul that are happening simultaneously. And this is just one extension of that aspect.
So let's talk about the sacred feminine. What is the sacred feminine, and how is it connected to self-love?
It is everything about self-love. The sacred feminine is the feminine aspect of all that is, including the divine. So there is a feminine aspect and a masculine aspect, and you see that in nature, and you have it expressed in humanity as genders. But we have both. The soul is genderless, but is made up of aspects. These two aspects, the feminine and the masculine. So within us, we have these two aspects. We just have a gendered body. So we lean a little bit more towards our gendered body aspect, but we need both to exist and to function. And the feminine aspect is it's not an opposite of the masculine; it's more of a complement of the masculine. The feminine is things like compassion and forgiveness and wisdom and faith and being and stillness, faith and things like that. And the masculine is more active, more doing, more strategizing, more analyzing, more about responsibility. And there's a lot of different things that fall into both categories, and we have all of them together within us. And it is a matter of balancing them out and honoring both of them that causes us to have harmony and balance.
That made me think about the heart and the mind when you described these traits and qualities.
Yes, the heart and the mind, yeah. And self-love it's pretty impossible to walk a path of self-love if you haven't activated the feminine aspects within yourself and offered them to yourself. So the feminine aspects are about nurturing and caring and loving and supporting.
Right. And that's a misconception that some people think that the feminine, sacred feminine or divine feminine, only women have those traits.
Yeah, well, I think people get mixed up with when we say the feminine, they get mixed up with that being about women. It isn't. And I wish there was a word for it so that people wouldn't get mixed up about it. You know, we could just call it A and B, but
Right, right.
and then it would make more sense. You know, I today have used a lot of my masculine aspects in order to get things done, right? And I've been very busy and I've been very productive. And Um, and later, I'll use some of my feminine aspects, when I'm still and I'm quiet, or I'm meditating, or I'm nurturing someone, or being compassionate. So we flow between the two, hopefully.
Yeah. How do we know that we have reached that balance or when we are in balance with these energies?
We feel full. There's a sense of wholeness. If you are constantly striving and constantly on the go and constantly doing and constantly strategizing and constantly planning and all of those masculine aspects, you're going to eventually drain yourself, and you hopefully will take time out to be still and to nurture yourself and to connect and all of those feminine aspects, and then you will find some balance. So likewise, if you're constantly still and you're not productive and you're not active and you're not doing and you're only being and receiving, then you aren't really being, productive human being. So there's a sense of a balance just in an everyday life of getting things done and feeling at peace at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like that, Jason. I really like that idea. The way you speak about these energies, it's about a balance. It's not just being one thing.
It's all about balance. That's why they're not opposites, they're components. So you need both in order to feel whole. And for the most part, most people do. But there's a lot of let's say there's a lot of men that are not activating their feminine for one reason or another, and there's a lot of feminine that are not activating their masculine enough. So that's just an example, of a person, not having both of those states in balance in themselves. But then you have the bigger version of this world, and is this world balanced with in harmony with its masculine and feminine aspects? And it isn't. And I think we all know that it is not.
And you read my mind. That was my next question.
Right.
So, in a way, do you think that we are more, most societies, like I am in the United States, I'm from Brazil originally. Do you think that Brazil, United States, or most countries in the world, they are going through this imbalance, more inclined to the feminine or the masculine?
Oh, without a doubt. They have been very set in the masculine, and it hasn't been a higher masculine. I wouldn't call it a divine masculine. I would call it a lower masculine, where the masculine is almost distorted, and it's distorted because the feminine has kind of been pushed away for so many years, and now it's coming back. But it's going to take some time. It is coming back. We are seeing that now. So it takes a while for everything to start to rebalance itself.
I like that. I guess the only concern is when the shift happens, where it's the feminine aspect it's being manifested in societies. We just now have to be careful not to be the lower parts of them.
We have to be careful not to be the lower feminine, and we have to be. We don't want to move from patriarchy to matriarchy. We don't want to do that. We want to create compassionate cooperation between the two, so that everything gets done and everything is working and productive, but there is an element of compassion and understanding and empathy in everything that is done. So that's how we will change the world, when more of the feminine is infused into what we have now going on now.
Wow. I absolutely love this ideal, this vision. And then, yeah, you talk about compassion a lot, being part of the feminine force and or energies, also wisdom. You mentioned faith earlier. Do you connect faith to trusting our intuition?
Yes. Faith as in trust, not as in faith as in religion. So faith as in an intuitive, innate trust that in life, in yourself, in spirit. So the feminine is about that. It's about trust. So, and faith. And I talk a lot about compassion because compassion is pretty much the closest thing to what we would describe universal love. There are many aspects to what love is, universal love. And compassion is a really direct way to get there, to get to that position.
Would you kind of explain to me the difference between empathy and compassion? Are they the same, or somehow you have a different understanding of these words?
I think to have compassion, you have to first have empathy. So it's hard to be compassionate if you don't have empathy. I think compassion is something that you give. Empathy is something that you feel.
I like that. And that makes sense to me. I remember somebody saying that empathy has a lot to do with feelings, right? And then sometimes we can get overwhelmed by feelings and then could impair our ability to act in a wise way.
Well, I think they were probably talking about people who were very empathic. So people who are very empathic feel very deeply and they feel pretty much everything. So when that happens, you have to look after yourself and make sure that what you're feeling is yours and not someone else's pain.
Right. And maybe this idea of compassion, I like that we are able to give. So, but that in order to give, we have to have it first.
Yeah,
And,
I think you feel empathy and you give compassion. I think compassion is an act,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, I agree. And there's so much wisdom, yeah, in that kind of giving, right?
Right, right.
So, talk to me about the 13 sacred feminine energies in archetypes. I would like to know what they represent and teach us.
Um, the 13 that are in the book, that are in my series of paintings, they start with Guinevere, and she's very much about self-respect and teaching and self-honor, teaching others to respect and honor you, but firstly learning how to do that for yourself. It's very difficult for someone to give you that if you are not giving it to yourself, because we teach people how to treat us. all the time through our own example. And then we go into the Magdalene, and she is about unconditional love. And then it is Bridget, and she's about the shifts and change, particularly in a woman's life and cycle, the cycles of womanhood, and going with the flow through them. And then Isis is about empowerment and inner power. And Mother Mary is about giving ourselves comfort and being our own comfort, learning how to comfort ourselves and ask for help also. Joan of Arc is about fear and courage and strength. And Miriam is about, her lesson is about hope and joy, and how the two are very connected. And then it's Kuan Yin. She is about forgiveness and compassion. She's on the cover of the book. And there's Morgan Le Fay about the shadow self, the dark and light sides of life. Artemis is about self-mastery and independence. And then it is Kali. She's about endings and beginnings. Inanna is about the false beliefs that we take on from other people. And then we end the book with Grandmother Spider, who is about weaving the web of your own life with clear and focused intentions.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom there. I'm a lover of wisdom.
Right. And it is a journey for sure,
So let's talk a bit more about self-love, because this is a topic that it's so important, and sometimes it's a challenge to even not just to practice, but to understand. And I guess my first question is about self-love and self-care. Some people confuse self-care with self-love. What comes first, self-love or self-care?
Yeah. Self-care is an aspect of self-love, but you can't sustain self-care unless it's driven by self-love. So, for example, self-care would be, taking a nice hot bath after a long day, or, saying no to something that you were too exhausted to attend. Self-care is an aspect of self-love, but it isn't self-love. Self-love is a daily practice of returning back to the truth of the self. And the truth of the self is that we are born from this vibration of unconditional love. So the practice of self-love and all that entails is something that we have to return to, because in this life, humanity has forgotten who they are. And so the journey of self-love is always a journey back to the truth of who one is.
That sounds very spiritual. So, how can those who don't believe or they don't want to engage in any form of spirituality also practice self-love?
Well, I talk a lot about filling one's own well, and how most people don't do that. They look out of themselves, or outside of themselves, I should say, to feel worthy, or to feel loved, or to feel accepted, or to feel valued. And that's a very unreliable source, anything outside of yourself. It's very fickle outside of yourself and can change in a second. So if one is relying on the aspects outside of themselves, they're kind of setting themselves up for heartbreak. And I'm not just talking about, romantic love. I'm talking about all of those things, the aspects of ourselves where we feel complete and whole. So if you are doing that, you will be disappointed. I can guarantee that. So the journey of self-love, why self-love is so important, why it's so important to go back to giving yourself it, is that you become your source of all that you need. That's not to say that you live as an island and you don't interact with others or depend on others for things, but it is that you fill your own well, that you're responsible for making yourself feel worthy. You're responsible for feeling loved. You're responsible for your own sense of security and stability. So, and it is easy to do once you know that you have an infinite supply of all of that within you.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. When we become responsible for our own existence, then everything's possible. When you realize that it's possible, you can do it.
Right. I mean, it's not to say, that doesn't negate or stop heartbreak or loss or sadness from happening in your life. But it means that um, when you have worked on filling your own well, when those disappointments and those losses happen, they don't affect your sense of worth or your sense of being enough.
Right. Which is very much connected to self love. Right. So, another question I have is about the practice of self love. Sometimes it's also confused with selfishness, narcissistic behaviors, and the sense of self importance. Can you clarify that so we know what is and what's not?
Well, being selfish, or what we describe as, give the word for selfishness, or self obsession, um, is really a sense of lack, so within ourselves. So if someone is selfish or narcissistic or self-obsessed, or it usually comes from a sense of their own lack. And so when you are in a place of self-love, when you are filled up with your own sense of who you are, your worthiness, you have an abundance of love to give to others. When you are selfish, because it is based on lack and fear, you have nothing to give to others. So again, I come back to that well. When it is full and you have filled it up with all your own source, then you have, it's overflowing, and you are compelled to share it with others.
Yeah. And that's easy to know when we are acting from a different place.
Exactly. So when you are in a place of self-love, when you honor and respect yourself, when you are have a knowing of your own value, you have a quiet confidence about you. You are quietly, what's the word? Quietly confident. You are quietly in your power. It's not a loud power. It's not an external power. It's an inside job, and it shows, because when someone is in the presence of someone who values themselves like that, it can't help but vibrate off them, and it feels good to be around them.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And I experienced that a lot with a lot of my guests, yeah, their presence. So there's something that I must have read on your website. This is very interesting. You say, when we spend our time in a quest to accept and appreciate everything and everyone around us, we then find it easier to accept and appreciate ourselves. Do you recall this passage? This
I don't. I don't, but I know what I meant if I did say that. Um, when you are focused on appreciation and gratitude for everything around you, that in itself is a practice. Um, when you are in that place of appreciation and gratitude, it raises your vibration raises all by itself, and you automatically you can't, you're kind of on a roll and you can't stop finding things to appreciate and to be grateful for. So it's kind of a snowball effect in a really good way. And when you can find things about yourself that you appreciate and that you're grateful for, then others will be more receptive to those parts of you as well, because you will be giving off that vibration of acceptance and appreciation.
right. I talked to a lot of people about unconditional self-love, unconditional love, or love itself, and I hear a lot what you said earlier too. That we, in order to love others, we've got to love ourselves first. Everything starts here. So, but this idea now, it's a little different in the way you're saying that even by practicing to love others unconditionally and everything around us, we ended up learning to love and to appreciate ourselves unconditionally too.
Well, I don't know if it's that way around. I don't know if you read that wrong, or I'm not sure, but it does always start with us. So when we are able to forgive ourselves, when we're able to be compassionate with ourselves about what we perceive to be our mistakes or our failures, when we are able to accept ourselves where we are right now, then it is without doubt more likely that you will do that to the person next to you, because you will have shown yourself that compassion. You will have shown yourself that understanding and forgiveness and acceptance, and it will have soothed you, and you will have come to a place of peace with it. So when you're in that place, it would be impossible for you not to offer that to another.
That's true. And no, that makes a lot of sense. And that's exactly what you said after I read the passage, the way you explained it. Yeah, it's coming from you. You're able to see the world and others with this amazing love because it's coming from you. There's no way we can even perceive anything out there that's not here.
Right. You see, when you are giving yourself compassion and acceptance and forgiveness and understanding, your own heart expands and opens, right? So then it is more open and expanded for the person that's next to you. And so it's a win-win.
Yeah. Oh, man. And this is how to experience. I mean, this is the best way of experiencing this. Yeah, being a human body, right? That's the best.
Right, right. And it isn't always easy, and our egos can get in the way, and our wounds get in the way. So everybody will have their own wounds, and it is everyone's responsibility to tend to their own wounds.
Yeah. And then I have here my final questions for you, but I have one before that. Speaking of healing, do you believe in such a thing as being healed, completely healed, already there?
In what aspect being healed? What do you mean by that? Are you talking about physical healing? You're talking about emotional healing? What do you mean?
Any kind of healing, a kind of healing that prevents us from manifesting the other sides, the hatred or the ego, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. I do believe that. Yeah. I mean, it takes work to heal yourself. It is, yeah, it takes work to heal yourself, and nobody else can do that for you. And you can't, yeah, nobody, even physically, when you have a physical wound or the physical issue, a healer cannot do that for you unless there's aspect of you that is doing it for yourself as well.
Yeah, of course, of course. So healing, in a way, is that's why the word is healing. It might be that we are constantly healing.
Yeah, I think there's, well, healing. I, I often think self love is another, or the journey of self love is healing. So, um, whether you have something, an issue with your body, or you have an emotional issue or a wound or a trauma, the only thing that will heal it is the vibration of love. And that's why, we come to this physical life to learn that. And many times we don't learn it in one lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. It always goes back to self-love for what I see.
I think it really, well, yeah, because
Yeah,
every spiritual journey, no matter what culture, no matter what practice or modality, at the end of the day, they all will take you back to yourself.
yeah, yeah. So true, Joe Jason. So true. Yeah, it goes back to the self, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a few more questions for you here. I call them final questions. Would you like to add anything?
No, I don't think so.
Wonderful. So my final questions: what was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself in this experience in the human body?
Oh my. Phew, I think the hardest lesson, and I'm not, have I completely learnt it? No. I've come a long way with it, but the hardest lesson for me was to stop punishing myself for things that I believed, were my fault, or even subconsciously. So there was a level of definitely, healing your sense of worthiness and your sense of enoughness can take a long time. You can know it intellectually and you can understand it intellectually, but totally to integrate it totally in the body and in the soul is can take a long time. So I would say that has been one of my biggest lessons, and still is. It's still something that I have to practice.
Right. That's I see that it's a challenge for women. Might be more for us women than men.
Yes. I don't know, actually. It manifests itself differently for sure. It manifests because I do feel that the men also struggle with their sense of power and their sense of confidence, and have been taught to always try and gain it from outside of themselves, which has caused all sorts of problems and wars and battles. um, so I think we as genders, we both have that same issue, but it manifests itself and shows itself in different ways. The female tends to withdraw and go into themselves, and the male, sorry, tends to reach out to try and find it. It's just the way, different ways of manifesting. But I think it's the same problem and same issue in both genders.
Actually, I really like your observation. It makes sense, right? Because it's not a gender thing. It's
Yeah, it's a humanity. It's the affliction of humanity, where there are very few who are born and grow up with a sense of complete worthiness. It's because it's not taught in our culture.
right, right, right. What is another word for healing?
Healing. Oh, another word for healing. Well, healing is a verb, right? Um, Loving. I mean, as I said, it's impossible to heal without there being a vibration of love attached to that. So, loving is healing. When you are loved, it's healing. It feels good.
So true. And I think I have 3 more questions. Yeah. If you knew you would die soon, meaning losing the body, would you make any change in your life or do anything differently?
Goodness me. I feel like it's a trick question. I don't think I would. I don't think I would. I mean, I don't think I would. I would probably worry less. But I try to worry less every day. But maybe if I felt like my time here was limited and was ending soon, then I would probably not worry so much as I do.
What are 3 things about life you know for sure as of today?
Life, I know for sure that there is so much joy to be felt, so much joy to be felt. And we have to, unfortunately, sad really, but we have to learn how to find it, how to access it. But once you do learn how to do that, and you do that through gratitude, a practice of gratitude, then it is really easy to find all the joy in any given moment, anywhere. And there's so much out there. Honestly, there's just so much joy to be received.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. That was a really beautiful answer. 1 in 3. Really great. It has been a great conversation, meaningful and healing. Thank you so much for your presence, Joe Jason, and your wisdom too.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
You can find everything on my website, which is joejason.com. My Etsy shop link is on there too, to find all my prints and products and my book and my workshops and online classes are all on there. So, and retreats and things. So everything's on the website, joejason.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, lovely. Thank you.
Yep. Bye for now, Joe Jason.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Joe Jason, please visit her website, joejason.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.